was Abaddon? You know, the angel of the abyss from the book of Revelation? For centuries, he's been painted as this demonic figure, a symbol for pure destruction. But what if that's all a massive misinterpretation? What if he was a real person, a figure straight out of history? Today, we're diving into a really radical theory about who Abaddon truly was, all based on a fascinating framework called impact theology. So here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the mystery of Abaddon himself. Then, and this is crucial, we'll cover the one rule you have to understand for any of this to make sense. From there, we'll connect a wild biblical prophecy to Roman law, unmask the story's real-world villains, and finally, we'll get to the theory's most mind-blowing claim of all. All right, let's jump right into the heart of it. The book of Revelation talks about this angel who rules over the abyss, this bottomless pit. His name is Abaddon in Hebrew, Apollyon in Greek, and both of those names mean the destroyer. So the big question has always been, who or what was he actually? And that brings us to the question this entire explainer hinges on. Was Abaddon some kind of supernatural being, an angel of doom clawing his way out of a pit? Or, and stick with me here, could he have been something much more real? Like, say, a famous prophet locked away deep inside a fortress prison. Here's the difference in a nutshell. The traditional view, it says Abaddon is just a symbol, an allegory for destruction. But impact theology, the method we're looking at today, makes an absolutely stunning claim. Abaddon was not a symbol at all. He was, in fact, the historical John the Baptist. Now, before you dismiss that idea, we have to talk about the method. To unpack the evidence, you first have to grasp the single foundational rule this entire theory is built on. It's a lens that changes how you read absolutely everything. That method is called Teologia de Impacto, or impact theology. And its core idea is actually pretty simple, but it's revolutionary. It says that apocalyptic books like Revelation aren't just collections of symbols and metaphors. No, it claims they are literal, factual records of actual historical events. Which brings us to its motto, nothing is a symbol, everything is a fact. I want you to think of this phrase as the decoder ring for everything we're about to talk about. If you apply this rule, suddenly the strange language of Revelation starts to look less like a fantasy epic and a lot more like a coded history. Okay, so let's put this rule into practice. We're going to start with the first major piece of evidence. This is where the theory forges a direct link between a specific prophecy in Revelation and the nitty-gritty of the Roman legal system. In Revelation chapter 9, there's a description of a torment that lasts for 5 months. Now, 5 lunar months is about 150 days. According to impact theology, that number isn't just random or symbolic. It's a precise historical timestamp. So why 150 days? Well, check this out. It just so happens to be the standard length of a Roman provincial legal process for political crimes. You know, when there was no appeal to the Senate. If you walk through the stages, from capture and hearings to custody and execution, the whole process adds up to, you guessed it, almost exactly 150 days. And this is where all the pieces just click into place. The theory literally maps the apocalyptic language of Revelation 9 directly onto the final days of John the Baptist. That fallen star, that's John being thrown into prison. The pit of the abyss, that's the actual Machaerus fortress. The swarming locusts, those were his disciples, plaguing the establishment with his message. The 5 months of torment line up perfectly with his 150-day legal ordeal. And the angel ruling over it all, Abaddon the destroyer, that's John himself, a man whose preaching was destroying the old religious and political order. So if John the Baptist is the hero of this retelling, who's the villain? Well, the theory doesn't point to some mythical dragon. It points to a very real, very powerful, and very dangerous royal family. The great dragon of Revelation is identified as the Herodian dynasty, specifically a triple threat of Herod the Great's sons. Herod Archelaus is the main dragon, Herod Antipas, the man who actually ordered John's execution, is the beast from the sea, and Herod Philip is the beast from the earth. See, according to this theory, these weren't symbols of evil. They were the literal political powers trying to stamp John out. The theory takes it even further, reimagining the famous temptations of Christ. It argues they weren't just spiritual tests in the desert. They were real political pressures coming from each of these Herodian rulers. The temptation to turn stones into bread, a material offer from Philip. The challenge to jump from the temple, a test of authority from Archelaus in Judea. and the offer of all the kingdoms of the world, a flat-out demand for political submission from Antipas, the most powerful of them all. All right, now we get to the final piece of the puzzle. And I gotta tell you, this is the theory's most mind-bending claim. If you've been following along so far, get ready, because the entire picture is about to be flipped upside down. This is a concept called o principio irradiador, or the irradiating principle. And here's what it proposes. The book of Revelation isn't the last book of the New Testament, it's the first. Think of it like source code. It's the foundational text, and all the events and ideas in the Gospels just radiate out from it. I mean, just look at how this inverts the traditional timeline we all know. Revelation, supposedly written by John the Baptist from his prison abyss, comes first. The Gospels then become later records of the events that were set in motion by that revelation. And Paul's letters, they're the theological explanations that come even later. So Revelation isn't a prophecy about the distant future. It's the actual script for the events that were happening right then. And that leads to this incredible conclusion. According to this theory, the book of Revelation isn't just a book about the book of life. It is the book of life. It's not a symbolic story. It's the literal, concrete record of redemption, the actual ledger where the names of the redeemed are written down. So we end with this powerful paradigm-shifting thought. The last book is, in fact, the first act of the total revelation. It leaves us with a pretty provocative question, doesn't it? What changes if the end is really the beginning? And what if Abaddon, the destroyer, was actually the prophet who kicked the whole thing off?